Royal Enfield's new Classic 650 is finally here. Well, admittedly, it's been here for a little while.
It has been here for a little while, but I reckon it begs the question, aren't they just competing with their own 650s?
So the first thing we have to start with is the looks of this bike, because it's just a cool, super classic looking bike.
Yeah, I mean, it is a great looking bike, and I love the looks of it.
Yeah.
Love the nacelle.
The nacelle is probably my favourite part of the looks of this bike. It just looks cool.
Yeah, and you've got things like a fuel gauge in there, nice little modern feature that certain other manufacturers don't include on their bikes.
Yeah.
And you've got the tripper. The tripper on the side, I think, is a nice little touch.
Yes, well, I've had issues with the tripper in the past on other Royal Enfields where it's kind of offset to the clock, which we know that Ross doesn't like, but it's all built in. It all looks purposeful, and I really like that. That was cool.
Love the rear mudguard. I think that looks great, but it's also really functional.
Yeah, and I think we both got to test out that rear mudguard. Me just riding in the rain constantly the whole time we had this bike.
Yeah.
And you had it out in the mud?
Yeah, so I went for a big ride with my mates, and we did a little bit of dirt roads, much to my mate Michael's displeasure. We took it on some dirt roads, and there was a fair bit of mud around, and like the back guard was covered in mud underneath.
Yep.
But my back and me, I was actually pretty good. So yeah, that guard I think looks great, and the front guard looks great as well.
Yep.
Looks great, but is also very, very functional.
And I will say, in terms of the looks as well, colour, I think we slightly disagreed, because I think we had the maroon and cream colour.
Vellum red.
Vellum red. It's maroon and cream. But it looked super cool. I thought the colours just suited the bike. Super classic looking. I thought it looked amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the vellum red, but to me the design of it wasn't quite right. I like the two colours, just didn't like the design.
Yeah.
I think we both loved that teal version.
The teal green would have been perfect. I would have loved to have that. But honestly, I got a lot of comments on this bike just purely by the looks of it.
Yep.
And I also loved the red. I thought it looked awesome.
Like all of the Royal Enfield 650s, gearbox is excellent. What do you think?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, it's pretty standard across all of them. I don't think there's much difference between any of the Royal Enfields in the gearbox. It's good. Nothing needs to change.
The other thing that I thought was really good on this bike is the suspension, and particularly the front suspension. Mm-hmm. Really, really plush. Now, I was on some country back roads that, most of them were okay, but some of them were a little bit potholy.
Yep.
And this thing was just soaking up those bumps. It was wonderful. That combined with the seat.
Yep.
Seat was really comfortable. How'd you find them?
Yeah, I was going to say, just in terms of ergonomics in general, I found the seating position and that seat really comfy. The positioning is fairly upright, and your legs are kind of just sitting at almost 90 degrees, slightly forward, but not aggressively forward. Yeah, ergonomically, I found it really comfortable.
Yeah, it's a little bit more upright than, say, something like the Shotgun.
Yep.
But similar riding position, I'd say.
Yeah.
The other thing I find with this bike, and Royal Enfields are all in this category, is that it feels really solid. Like it's metal.
Yep.
There's not a lot of plastic. Now that does make it a heavy bike.
Yes.
But I think that contributes to the bike feeling really planted when you are on the freeway.
Yeah, which I feel is like it's a fine line that Royal Enfield sort of ride on, of like it feels solid, but it is on the cheaper side of bikes. So some of that switchgear might be a little bit plasticky, but I think they make up for it in the parts that matter.
Yeah.
So it's a really good balance that I think they found there.
Surprisingly, I really like the mirrors on this bike.
Yay.
Unusual for Royal Enfield mirrors.
Well, I think they've been on a bit of a streak lately. The last few Royal Enfields that we've reviewed, those mirrors have been improved.
They've been okay. So no need to upgrade those. While we're on that, though, we do have a heap of mirrors in from Tech Bike Parts for all of the Royal Enfield 650s and 350s. So if you're after any Tech Bike Parts, particularly mirrors, we've got levers, a few other things as well, jump on the website.
Now, in terms of the sound, it's pretty good. Nothing crazy, but it's got a nice note to it, I thought. Not too loud, but a nice note. It's got the peashooter on each side. I think it does look cool as well.
I mean, that all adds to the look of the bike. Those peashooters just make it look like a classically styled bike.
Yeah.
The other thing is it's LAMS approved.
Yeah.
You buy this, you kind of don't need to upgrade because there's plenty of power.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And you'd be like the coolest cat on the block on your L's, like rocking up on this bike.
The other thing I love about Royal Enfields is they're great value for money.
Yeah.
So under 12 grand. So this one in Vallum Red is 11,190.
Yep.
It's an additional $200 for the teal green.
Which I would say is worth it because the green looks incredible.
Absolutely. And then the black chrome is an additional $700. So under 12 grand, you've got a 650 twin that's LAMS approved.
Yeah.
That I don't reckon you need to upgrade once you're on your full license. You could happily use this as your only bike.
And I will. I'll take it.
Okay, so we said it in thumbs up that it's heavy and we thought it was a good thing because it does
Which it is.
It does feel planted. Yeah, it's true. But at 243 kilos, it felt like it did take the engine a little bit of time to get up to speed.
Yep.
Now, I'm comparing it to my partner's Continental GT, which is about 212 kilos, although we've stripped a little bit of weight off that. The way we've stripped off the weight is by adding an aftermarket exhaust. So it's got an S&S, so it sounds a bit better. It's got a high-flow air filter. It's got a power booster plug. So it feels quite sprightly, but it's a lighter bike.
Yeah, which I will say, whenever anyone just jumped on the bike to feel it, everyone's first comment is, wow, it's quite heavy. And it is, like, especially when you're just sitting on it, like, not moving. But as soon as you start moving,
Yeah, it's
fine. Like, you're not feeling it. It's quite low down. It doesn't really affect too much of the riding, but it is a heavy bike. And actually, while we're talking about that, I will say that's the only issue when I really found the weight come into play for me was like if I was trying to park it. So obviously you're just pushing it around. With the peashooters on each side as well, it widened up the back of that bike and just the weight of it just made it a little bit trickier to, if I was reversing into like, you know, a small park or trying to fit between other bikes.
Yep.
It was just like a little thing that, you know, you might have to go find a slightly bigger spot to park.
Now, I don't know if you found this, but that side stand is really hard to find.
Every time, every single time.
I put a lot of marks on the exhaust
Yes.
because I'm like, where is it? Trying to find the side stand. And it wasn't just us. Lucas had the same issue.
Yeah.
So I think that's something you would get used to. So we had the bike for about 3 weeks. Tegan and I and Lucas also rode it. He just couldn't do the review today, but he found the same thing. Now, I did find some minor vibrations when I was sitting on the freeway. I haven't really noticed those on any of the other Royal Enfield 650s, so I don't know whether it's a change in the chassis. I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
But it was only minor. It was just like vibrations through the bars and through the pegs.
So did you notice it in the mirrors as well?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't feel the mirrors vibrating. It was just I felt some vibrations in the bars and the pegs.
Okay.
Not a major issue, and I sort of got used to them. It certainly wouldn't put me off buying this bike. Having said that, like I own a Laverta, and that thing vibrates incredibly. So these were just minor vibrations, and as I said, not something that I was really expecting.
Yeah. So I got to take this bike to a few different places, mostly inner Sydney CBD. I did some commuting on it. I also went on the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride.
Your first time, yeah?
My very first time doing it. So if you don't know what it is, it's a fundraiser and a ride where we're raising funds for prostate cancer and also men's mental health. So it was a really great cause. It was so much fun. I mean, you've done it many times.
I've done it many times, yeah.
Yeah.
It's great fun.
So you show up generally on a classic bike. So it was perfect that we had this classic Royal Enfield because rocking up on that, it felt good.
Yeah.
And it got a few comments as well. Like quite a few people came over, had a look at the bike. It's obviously relatively new. So people were interested in asking some questions, which I did my utmost to answer for them. Yeah, I would say that day it was amazing.
Yeah, it's a wonderful event. 200 cities across the world. They've raised, I think it's upwards of 50 million US for the two charities that we mentioned. They partner with Movember. So great cause and just a really good vibe.
So on that ride, the bike was amazing, very slow speeds because there's a lot of us. When I was commuting on it in general, it was great. Like I had no issues on it. I didn't really get an opportunity to take it on freeways or like do a big ride on it. And I will agree with Ross, it is a little bit slow off the mark. But that power is there still. Like you can feel it,
just
especially once you get out of second gear, basically. So all in all, I'm going to give it an 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's in line with my experience with the other 650s in the Royal Enfield range. Yeah, it's a good bike and it's very well priced.
And for me, it's an 8 also.
Okay.
I probably don't like it as much as some of the other Royal Enfields I've ridden. I much preferred the Bear. Still liked it, and I'd still happily have one. I commuted a couple of times, took it on a few rides through the national park, and then went off with a few mates to Nerriga pub for lunch, which was a great ride. So down the south coast, stopped at Nowra, and then cut across to Nerriga. So we covered freeways, we covered backroads, country roads, and also a little bit of dirt. As I said, my mate Michael was not happy about that. He was on an R18. He did a little bit of that and stopped, and we sort of went a bit further and then came back.
Fair.
That's where I copped a bit of mud. So the 650 engine is great. The bike is comfortable, and you could certainly tour on this with that seat and the suspension. The thing is wonderful.
Yeah.
The mudguards, they keep you nice and clean. So, yeah, about an 8. Really enjoyed it. Not my favourite Royal Enfield. Still prefer the Bear and the Hemi, but would happily have one. So in terms of competition for this bike, I reckon there's only really 2 currently on the market. And I could be wrong, and if you think there are other bikes that are in competition with this one, let us know. But I think it's things like the Kawasaki W800, which I haven't ridden, but they are available in Australia. And the other one's the BSA Gold Star, which are not available in Australia. So I think they're the 2 that are really in competition with this bike.
Outside of Royal Enfields themselves.
And that's the thing, isn't it? So the thing is, are Royal Enfield just really competing with their own market here? I think they probably are. So I can see people who may, be thinking about an Interceptor buying a classic 650 instead.
Yeah.
So I think you could argue, they are eating into their own market.
I will say, though, on the ride, there was a guy there who was on a classic 350 who was very interested in looking at the 650. So he was asking me a lot of questions. So he was very keen to upgrade. So, yes.
So that's another thing, isn't it? People upgrading from a 3 who love that classic styling, want to upgrade from a 350. Yeah, definitely another market for this bike.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you've got such a fantastic engine like the 650 Twin and the sheer depth of the Royal Enfield history and heritage, it just makes sense that they produce another bike with this engine.
Yeah.
So I actually think this is one that's going to really resonate with Royal Enfield purists. Yes, it's a twin, but it's also air and oil cooled. And honestly, I can't imagine them putting something like the 450 Sherpa engine, the liquid cooled engine, in a classic style bike.
Yeah.
It just would not fit the aesthetic.
Yeah, good point. So that's now 6 bikes in the Royal Enfield 650 range, and you can check all of them out over here.